He thought he was rushing to save his father, but what he found at the hospital door would change his life forever. A tired cleaning lady, eyes heavy, hands worn, stood guard like she had nothing left to lose, except him. The moment Armin stepped out of his black luxury car, the world felt different. Not because of the flashing hospital lights, not because of the late-night silence, but because something inside him felt uneasy. His father, the only man he had ever feared and admired, had collapsed. The call came like a storm. No explanation, no time to think. Just, come quickly. Armin had built an empire before turning 35. Money, power, influence, he had everything. But as he rushed through the hospital corridor, none of it mattered. For the first time in years, he felt like a helpless son. When he reached the private ward, he slowed down. There, outside the door, sat a woman on a plastic chair. Her uniform was simple, slightly wrinkled. A cleaning lady. A bucket and mop rested beside her. But what caught Armin off guard was her posture, alert, protective, almost like a guard. "Move," he said coldly, barely glancing at her. But she didn't. "He just fell asleep," she replied softly, her voice calm yet firm. "Doctor said he needs rest." Armin frowned. "Do you even know who I am?" She looked up, meeting his eyes without fear. "Yes. You're his son. But tonight, he needed someone. And you weren't here." Her words hit harder than any insult ever could. Armin pushed the door open anyway. Inside, his father lay still, fragile, a shadow of the powerful man he once was. Machines beeped quietly. For a moment, Armin forgot how to breathe. Behind him, the woman quietly stood and stepped in, adjusting the blanket, checking the floor like she had done it 100 times. "What are you doing?" Armin asked, confused. "Taking care of him," she answered simply. That night, Armin didn't leave. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Doctors checked reports. But the one person who never moved far was her. Every time his father stirred, she was there. Every time something seemed off, she noticed before anyone else. Around 3 a.m., Armin finally spoke again. "Why are you doing this? It's not your job." She hesitated, then said quietly, "Sometimes, care doesn't come from duty. It comes from humanity." Armin didn't respond. But something inside him shifted. By morning, he had learned her name, Zara. And for the first time in years, Armin stayed not because he had to, but because he wanted to understand why a stranger cared more about his father than he did. Hook for Chapter 2. What Armin discovered about the cleaning lady's past would leave him speechless, and force him to confront a truth he had ignored his entire life. The next few days changed everything. Armin started coming earlier, leaving later. Not for business calls, not for meetings, but for his father, and strangely, for Zara. He watched her closely. The way she spoke gently to patients no one visited. The way she fixed small things without being asked. The way she smiled, even when exhaustion clearly weighed her down. One evening, curiosity got the better of him. "Zara, why my father?" he asked. "Out of all the patients here, why him?" She paused, her eyes lowering slightly. "Because once, someone like him saved me." Armin leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Years ago, my mother was dying. We had no money. No hope. One man paid for her treatment anonymously. We never found out who, until I saw your father here and recognized him from an old photo in a newspaper." Armin's heart skipped. "He didn't remember us," she continued. "But I remembered him. And when I saw him alone, I couldn't leave." Silence filled the room. Armin looked at his father, this powerful, distant man, through a completely different lens. "All these years," Armin whispered, he never told me. Zara smiled faintly. Kindness doesn't always ask to be remembered. That night, something broke inside Armin, and something new began. He started talking to his father, even when he couldn't respond. He stayed by his side. He noticed the little things. And slowly, he began to understand what truly mattered. Days later, his father finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw wasn't the machines, or the doctors. It was Armin. Tears filled the old man's eyes. And for the first time in his life, Armin held his father's hand, not as a businessman, not as a distant son, but as someone who had finally learned how to love. Outside the room, Zara quietly smiled, and turned to leave. But Armin stopped her. "Don't go," he said softly. She looked back, surprised. "You didn't just save him," Armin continued. "You saved me too." Months later, the hospital wing was renovated, not with luxury, but with warmth. Free care programs were introduced. Patients who had no one, now had someone. And at the heart of it all stood Zara, no longer just a cleaning lady, but a symbol of compassion. As for Armin, he still had his empire. But now, he also had something far more valuable. A heart that finally understood that true wealth isn't measured by money, but by the lives you choose to care for when no one is watching. Hook for Chapter 2. The truth about the cleaning lady wasn't just surprising, it was the one thing powerful enough to break a billionaire's pride and rebuild his heart from the inside out. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the hospital window, touching everything with a quiet warmth. Armin hadn't slept much, yet for the first time in years, he didn't feel restless. His eyes moved instinctively toward the corner of the room. Zara was already there, adjusting his father's blanket with gentle care, like it was second nature. There was something about her presence. It wasn't loud, it wasn't demanding, but it filled the space in a way nothing else could. "You've been here all night again," Armin said, his voice softer than usual. Zara didn't look up immediately. He woke up twice. Was disoriented. Needed someone to calm him. Armin swallowed. "You could have called the nurse." "I did," she replied. "But sometimes, people don't just need medicine. They need someone to stay." That line lingered in his mind long after she said it. Days turned into a quiet routine. Armin began canceling meetings, ignoring calls that once felt urgent. The empire he had built so carefully started to feel distant. Strange. Almost meaningless compared to the steady rhythm of his father's breathing and Zara's silent dedication. But questions kept building inside him. One evening, unable to hold back anymore, he spoke. "Zara, tell me the truth. Why are you really doing all this?" She froze for a second. Then slowly, she placed the glass of water down and faced him. "Because I owe him a life," she said. Armin frowned. "What does that even mean?" Her eyes softened, but there was pain hidden beneath them. "Years ago, my mother was dying. We had nothing. No money, no connections, nothing. Every hospital turned us away. I watched her fade a little more every day." Armin felt his chest tighten. "Then one day," she continued, "someone paid for her treatment. Quietly. No name, no face. Just a message left behind, take care of her." Armin's voice dropped. "And that someone was my father?" She nodded. "I didn't know at first. But later, I saw his picture in a business magazine. I never forgot that face." Armin turned to look at his father, lying still but peaceful. The same man he had always seen as cold, strict, unreachable, had once saved a stranger's life without asking for anything in return. "He never told me," Armin whispered. Zara gave a faint smile. "Some people don't give to be seen. They give because they can't ignore someone else's pain." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of realization. That night, Armin didn't just sit beside his father. He spoke. Not about business. Not about success. But about regret. About distance. About the years he spent chasing everything except the one thing that truly mattered. I became everything you wanted me to be, he murmured, his voice breaking. But I forgot how to be your son. Zara stood quietly at the door, hearing every word, but saying nothing. Because she knew, some moments don't need witnesses. They need truth. 2 days later, something changed. A small movement. A flicker. Armin leaned forward instantly. Dad? Slowly, painfully, his father's eyes opened. For a moment, confusion clouded them. Then they settled on Armin's face. And something softened. Armin grabbed his hand tightly, as if afraid the moment might disappear. I'm here, he said, barely holding his tears. I'm not going anywhere. The old man's lips trembled slightly. No words came out, but they didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, they understood each other. Recovery was slow, but steady. And throughout it all, Zara remained the quiet strength holding everything together. Until one day, she was gone. Armin noticed immediately. The room felt different. Empty in a way he couldn't explain. He stepped outside, asking the staff, searching the corridors. Finally, he found her near the exit, holding her small bag. You're leaving? He asked, surprised. She nodded. My work here is done. No, Armin said quickly. You can't just leave like that. She looked at him gently. I was never meant to stay. You stayed when no one else did, he replied. You cared when I didn't. That means something. Zara hesitated. It meant everything to me, to repay a debt. Armin stepped closer. Then stay, not because you owe anything. But because you want to. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then Zara smiled, this time, not out of duty, but something deeper. Months later, the hospital looked different. Not richer, but kinder. A new wing opened for patients who couldn't afford treatment. No one was turned away anymore. The cold, sterile halls now carried warmth, laughter, and hope. And at the center of it all stood two people who came from completely different worlds. One who had everything but felt empty. And one who had nothing, but gave everything. Armin didn't just rebuild the hospital. He rebuilt himself. Because in the end, he realized something simple, yet powerful. Money can buy silence, comfort, and control. But only compassion can heal a heart, restore a family, and give life a meaning worth living.